You are being robbed, not by a thief in the night, but by a ghost in the room. Every time you check a notification you didn't ask for, every time you explain yourself to someone who has already judged you, every time you say, "It's okay," when your soul is screaming that it's not, you are paying a tax you never signed for. Your energy is the only currency that no one can replenish for you. It is finite. It is precious. And right now you are scattering it on the floor like it's worth nothing. Today the bleeding stops. I'm going to show you the Stoic architecture of the Inner Citadel. You will learn why silence is a weapon of the elite, why boundaries are an act of war against chaos, and how to reclaim the absolute power you've been surrendering for years. By the end of this journey, you won't just feel motivated, you will be untouchable. Think about that heavy fatigue, not the kind that comes from a long day of physical labor, but the kind that lingers after a 5-minute conversation. You feel drained, distracted, and fragmented. You've been taught that being available is a virtue, that being nice is a requirement. Stoicism says this is a slow suicide. You are exhausted because you've made your mind a public park where anyone can walk in, scream, and leave their trash. You've become a reactor to other people's needs and forgotten how to be the author of your own peace. There is an invisible economy of energy. Every interaction is a transaction. Dark psychology thrives on the reactive person. If I can make you explain yourself, I own your time. If I can make you angry, I own your peace. Most people live in explanation mode, begging for a validation that will never come. The Stoics understood that disturbance doesn't come from events, but from our judgment of them. Energy is not just physical, it is spiritual and mental. When you respond reflexively, you are a slave to the stimulus. Your energy leaks because you have no filters, only open wounds seeking approval. Consider Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man on earth, surrounded by liars, flatterers, and toxic politicians. He wrote in his journal, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." He didn't build just walls of stone. He built a wall of indifference. He understood that his mind was a fortress. If he didn't grant the key, no one could enter. He moved through the Roman court with a quiet weightlessness because he stopped participating in the unconscious transactions of the ego. He wasn't seeking to be understood. He was seeking to be coherent. To reclaim this power, you need a protocol of containment. Phase 1 is the energy audit. For the next 24 hours, observe without judgment. Who leaves you heavy? Which tasks make your mind go dark? Stop guessing and start measuring. Energy is a finite resource. Treat it like your life depends on it, because it does. Phase 2 is the execution of justification. Stop explaining your no. A boundary with an explanation is a negotiation. A boundary without one is a fact. Those who deserve your presence do not need a report. Those who don't deserve it won't listen anyway. Phase 3 is the 2-second kill. When provoked, wait. Silence is the most terrifying response to someone seeking control. In those 2 seconds, you retoma the possession of your soul. You transition from a victim of circumstance to a master of response. Phase 4 is the internal reset. Use stillness to wipe the slate clean. You cannot build a kingdom on a foundation of other people's noise. Phase 5 is strategic absence. Stop showing up where your soul is no longer safe. You don't need a dramatic exit. Just stop being there. Your absence is a louder statement than any argument you could ever win. Protecting your energy is not arrogance, it is self-respect. When you draw a line, you aren't being cold. You are becoming deliberate. Realize that your worth is not a debate. The moment you stop negotiating your dignity is the moment the world begins to adjust to you. Stoicism is not about feeling nothing. It is about not letting anything feel for you. You were not born to be a warehouse for other people's expectations. Every reclaimed moment is a step toward clarity and autonomy. By protecting your energy, you safeguard your capacity to act in alignment with your true values. Presence that is consciously allocated is power. Life navigated with this awareness becomes intentional rather than dispersed. You now have the framework to stop being a reaction and start being a force. But there is a darker side to this. There are 5 specific signs that the people closest to you are actually energy vampires designed to keep you weak. They use your empathy as a bridge to your destruction. Do you know how to spot the mask before it slips? In our next breakdown, We will reveal the Stoic lessons on identifying toxic souls before they drain your future. Stay steady. Protect the fortress. Your transformation starts in the silence you choose to keep. The world today is a cacophony of demands, an endless stream of digital pings and social expectations that scream for our attention. From the moment your eyes open to the blue light of a smartphone until the final scroll before bed, you are immersed in a culture that treats silence as a vacuum to be filled. There is a persistent, heavy pressure to have an opinion on every headline, to share every personal milestone, and to react instantly to every provocation. We have become a civilization of broadcasters, yet in this race to be heard, we have overlooked a devastating cost. This is the invisible tax, a subtle but constant drainage of your most precious resources, your mental energy, your professional reputation, and your internal focus. Every time you speak without necessity, you are paying a fee you never agreed to, leaking the power of your character into the void of mindless noise. This brings us to the great modern paradox. We have been conditioned to believe that speaking is the ultimate expression of power. We are told to find our voice, to speak our truth, and to be loud enough to command the room. Yet, if you look closely at the world around you, a different reality emerges. Those who speak the most frequently often carry the least amount of genuine influence. Their words become cheap currency, devalued by oversupply. When a person is constantly talking, their insights lose their edge and their presence loses its weight. They are paying the invisible tax in full, trading their authority for the fleeting comfort of making noise. True power, as the ancient masters understood, does not lie in the volume of your voice, but in the intentionality of your silence. To reclaim your power, you must first understand what Stoic silence actually is. It is a common misconception to view Stoicism as a philosophy of the emotionless or the mute. People often imagine a Stoic as a cold, unfeeling statue, or someone who has simply given up on communication. This could not be further from the truth. Stoic silence is better described as voluntary restraint. It is the active, conscious decision to withhold speech until it serves a clear and virtuous purpose. It is about being the master of your tongue rather than its servant. This isn't about being unable to speak. It is about being entirely capable of staying quiet when others are falling over themselves to be heard. It is a strategic withdrawal that preserves your inner capital. This philosophy finds its roots in the teachings of Epictetus, a man who rose from slavery to become one of history's greatest thinkers. He introduced the core principle of the dichotomy of control. Epictetus taught that our primary focus should be on what we can control, our own thoughts, intentions, and words. Crucially, he pointed out that while we have total control over what we say, we have zero control over how others interpret those words. This is where many of us fail and pay the tax. We spend hours over-explaining ourselves, hoping to manage the perceptions of others, yet we are chasing a ghost. Silence is the only tool that minimizes misinterpretation. When you refuse to speak unnecessarily, you deny the world the opportunity to twist your words or use them against you. You protect your inner citadel by keeping the gates closed. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. This simple act of connection helps us build a community of those seeking the quiet strength of the Stoic path. When we overtalk, we are essentially leaking energy. Imagine your mental focus as a pressurized vessel. Every unnecessary word is a small crack in that vessel, allowing your motivation and clarity to hiss away. We often engage in this form of self-sabotage by trying to prove our worth to people who don't truly matter to us. We talk ourselves into corners, reveal our plans before they are ready, and dilute our goals by seeking premature validation. This is the heavy price of the invisible tax. It leaves us exhausted and hollowed out. The foundation for this wisdom was laid centuries ago by Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism. He famously observed that nature has given us 2 ears and only 1 mouth for a reason, so that we may hear twice as much as we speak. Zeno understood that the intake of information is where wisdom begins, while the output of speech is where the risk of folly resides. By observing more and speaking less, we gather the data necessary to navigate the world with precision. We stop reacting and start responding, This journey into silence is not about losing your voice, but about making sure that when you do speak, the world has no choice but to listen. This strategic withdrawal isn't just about protection, it's about the law of scarcity. In economics, the more there is of something, the less it is worth. The same principle applies to our words. If you are the person who comments on every social media thread, chimes in on every office rumor, and narrates every minor inconvenience, you are flooding the market with your own currency. Your invisible tax is the devaluation of your own voice. Contrast this with the person who remains composed and quiet during a heated meeting. When that individual finally decides to contribute, the entire room shifts its focus. Their words carry the weight of a mountain because they have been forged in the furnace of restraint. This is where the modern individual begins to transform from a victim of the noise into a master of their environment. Consider the historical weight of Cato the Younger. In the chaotic atmosphere of the Roman Senate, the air was thick with the babbling of men seeking favor. Senators would shout over one another to appear relevant. Yet Cato was different. He would often spend entire sessions in total silence, observing the posturing and identifying the subtle flaws in his colleagues' logic. He didn't feel the need to defend his ego against every minor slight or participate in the trivial political theater. However, when the moment was critical, when the fate of the Republic hung in the balance, Cato would rise. Because he had not wasted his energy on trivialities, his voice possessed a piercing clarity that could halt a debate in its tracks. He understood that silence is not the absence of power, but the gathering of it. This leads us to the psychology of the pause. In our modern hierarchies, we often feel an almost physical discomfort when a conversation lulls. The invisible tax demands that we fill that gap with nervous laughter, meaningless small talk, or unnecessary personal disclosures. But the high-value individual recognizes the pause as a position of strength. By allowing a silence to linger, you force others to reveal their intentions first. People who are uncomfortable with their own internal world will often talk to soothe their anxiety, inadvertently handing over leverage and status. Silence allows you to remain an enigma, a fortress whose walls are not easily breached by those who seek to manipulate or overshadow you. At the heart of this practice is what Stoics call the gap. This is the psychological territory between a stimulus and your response. In our hyper-reactive world, the invisible tax is highest when we are provoked. An insult on a digital screen, a rude comment from a stranger, or a crisis at work usually triggers an immediate emotional reaction. We lash out, we defend, and we spiral into chaos. But silence acts as the bridge that allows reason to cross over from the impulse of the moment. By choosing to remain quiet for even a few seconds after a provocation, you reclaim your agency. You are no longer a puppet pulled by the strings of your emotions. You are a calm observer, deciding if a response is even worth your limited inner capital. This gap is where your freedom lives. This restraint is equally vital in our personal relationships, where the tax is often paid in the form of unnecessary conflict. How many arguments escalate simply because people feel the need to have the last word? We often talk ourselves into trouble that a few moments of intentional quiet could have completely avoided. Stoicism teaches us that we do not need to correct every misunderstanding or win every verbal skirmish. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do for a relationship is to listen without the immediate intent to reply. This active silence fosters cognitive empathy, allowing you to hear the subtext behind someone's words, their fears and hidden motivations. You become a superior collector of data. Instead of reacting to what is said, you understand why it is being said. This shift moves you from a state of constant social friction to a state of profound influence. Silence becomes the laboratory where you refine your perception of the world. In the digital age, the invisible tax finds its aggressive collector. Social media platforms are designed as arenas of noise, where the currency of exchange is your attention. Every time you post a fleeting thought or engage in a digital argument, you are handing over a piece of your peace. You are paying a premium to be noticed in a crowd that does not care. To combat this, we must look to the Stoic practice of leithbioses, or living unnoticed. This is a strategic decision to reclaim power through anonymity. By choosing not to broadcast every detail of your existence, you protect the sanctity of your life. You stop performing for an audience and live for yourself. This principle teaches us that true freedom is found not in being seen by everyone, but in being understood by ourselves. The power of living unnoticed is that your value is no longer tied to the validation of strangers. To bridge this wisdom with reality, you can employ the 3-second rule. Whenever you are prompted to respond, whether it is a text or a provocative comment, you must wait. Count to 3. This intentional pause is the death of reactivity. This is the moment where you regain control over your vocal cords and your digital footprint. In those 3 seconds, the invisible tax loses its momentum. You create a buffer where logic can overtake impulse. This silence allows you to ask, is this response necessary? Or am I simply leaking my inner capital to satisfy an urge? Often you will find that after 3 seconds, the need to speak has vanished, and with it the potential for regret. This restraint serves as a primary defense for the inner citadel. There is a psychological danger in oversharing your ambitions. When we speak about a goal, our brain releases dopamine associated with achievement. We feel as though we have already succeeded just by talking, which kills the motivation required to do the work. Silence acts as a pressurized seal, keeping that energy contained for action. By keeping the gates of your mind closed, you allow the internal pressure of your ambition to build into a powerful force. As you move through your day, remember that your plans are yours alone until they are realized. Let the world see your results, not your blueprints. By guarding your intentions, you ensure that your drive remains focused and your resolve stays ironclad. Building a personal silence ritual is essential. This is digital stoicism, where you intentionally disconnect from sensory overload. Whether it is the first hour of the morning or a dedicated block in the evening, the world must be silenced. In this quiet, your mind recalibrates. You stop being a spectator and become the protagonist of your own life. This intentional silence is the ultimate act of rebellion against a world that demands your constant participation. This ritual allows you to process information and strengthen your mental fortifications. It is in the silence that the most important conversations happen, the ones you have with yourself. Silence is not a void. It is a reservoir of potential energy. Every time you refrain from an unnecessary comment or a reactive defense, you accumulate inner capital. You become a person of substance. By refusing to pay the invisible tax, you gain a level of clarity and influence that those who babble can never achieve. You move through the world with the confidence of a fortress, standing firm while the storms of public discourse rage around you. Finally, I offer you a challenge. For 24 hours, commit to a fast from complaining and offering unprompted opinions. Observe the world and listen, but keep your lips sealed unless a response is vital. At the end of the day, reflect on your internal power. You will find that you are less exhausted and more respected. You will discover that by saying nothing, you have finally begun to speak with authority. The tax only has power if you pay it. Reclaim the inner citadel.